Hey everyone, and welcome back to the long game. I'm Ross, Regis Professor at University of Glasgow.
And hi, I'm Sandy, joining today from Edinburgh, just back from a glorious week in Granton and Spey. If you're not familiar with it, it's a beautiful little town just within the Cairngorms National Park. But unfortunately, my broadband wasn't good enough to do this episode just a few days ago.
We did try, right?
We tried.
Well, on that note, today's episode is excitingly titled How We Die. So, that sounds pretty grim, Sandy, and I'm sorry for after coming off such a magnificent vacation. How did we decide to do this one?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's because you can't build a bioeconomy if you don't know what you're trying to fix. And we talk a lot, Ross, about the life sciences in Scotland, the exciting 25 billion target that we're grappling with at the moment. In terms of our industry contribution and the shiny new labs that we're erecting, the amazing tech that's being developed here. But ultimately, and unfortunately, the entire industry exists because the human body fails.
Yeah, and in Scotland, it fails in very specific and not so great ways, unfortunately, as I've been learning since I've been here, and like people like yourself have been teaching me. So, for those of you who don't know, I'm a cancer researcher. Actually, my lab studies a number of cancers, but primarily colorectal cancer. And so, my team and I are always looking at what happens when the body breaks. But today, we're going to zoom out from that. We're going to look at the statistics of death in Scotland in 2026, and then, because this is a podcast about bioentrepreneurship, we're going to look at the business of keeping people alive.
Yeah, we're going to cover the big killers today, Ross. We're going to look at some of the statistics around cancer, heart disease, the rising tide of dementia, and we'll touch on what has become known as the Glasgow effect and whether we're finally starting to shake that off.
Yep. So grab a coffee, put down the bacon roll, and I got to say, I had one today on the golf course. And let's talk about mortality. So um, let's get into it, Sandy. And let's start with some numbers. The National Records of Scotland just released the latest data sets, as you know. All right, Sandy, here we go. If you had to guess, what is the number one killer in Scotland right now? And let me just say, I just ran this by my family. They got it wrong.
I'll have to try that later, but I'm assuming it's still heart disease, given our reputation for deep fried everything. And I say this while shuffling my jam donut slightly further out of view of the camera. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure. Is it still heart disease?
First of all, saw the what I would call a donut. Um, well, it used to be, and of course that's what my family and I thought as well. But no, sadly, it's cancer, and I say sadly because I'm a
Mm.
cancer researcher. So what I didn't know until we actually did these numbers is cancer accounts now for about 28% of all deaths in Scotland, which is insane. Heart disease, which used to run neck and neck for
Mm.
forever, still there at number two,
Okay.
but it's only about 10 to 11%, which is good news. Cancer is officially the big one.
Well, yeah, I guess that's progress of sorts, right? But why the shift? So are we getting healthier, or indeed are we getting unhealthier? Or are we just living longer and encountering more complex disease later in life?
Yeah, well, the good news is it's partly because we're living longer. So this is good. Good news. Cancer is largely a disease of aging, although that's changing a little bit. If you don't die of a heart attack at 60, of course, you get to live long enough to get cancer at 80. So remember, we all die of something
Mhm.
eventually. But the type of cancers we see in Scotland, and this is something that's really different. I come from New York to here, and it's really a different distribution: lung, bowel, what I call colorectal, esophageal.
Mm.
These are still heavily linked to lifestyle, as actually we both know very well. So smoking rates have dropped, but the lag time on lung cancer is 20 years. So that's an example. We see the echoes of the 1990s and 2000 habits now.
Yeah, right. And I might challenge a little and suggest lifestyle and environment. So, for example, I'm closely tracking the increasing links between lung cancer, and air pollution. And of course, we're all aware of how bad our air pollution has got. But what about the other big categories? How are we doing on those, Ross?
Oh, you mean like dementia and Alzheimer's? Yeah, actually, they're about even with heart disease. So really, I just have learned a lot by plunging into these numbers. They're also around 10%. And actually, that is going to be scary for the healthcare system.
Mm,
And you and I actually had a long chat about this on the golf course. Because it's not a quick death. It's a long, slow, and I hate to say this, expensive decline. My dad went through this, so I have some specific thoughts about this.
mm.
And I have to tell you, Sandy, I hated watching him go through it. My dad was a great guy, and this is not the best way to go. It's one of the reasons that my team and I actually are having a look at dementia. And actually, we've just have a paper in revision on this very topic. Um, and of course, if I were to turn this back to you, I would say, unfortunately, we also have drug deaths.
Mm. Yeah, and I'm really sorry, to hear about
Yeah,
the
thanks.
story behind your dad's condition, Ross, and indeed, I guess our issue with drugs in Scotland is also it's self-inflicted, and it's thoroughly and deeply depressing. However, I also saw that in the 2024 report, haven't the numbers dipped slightly? There's been some change on that, right?
Yeah, yeah, it did. A decrease of about 13% in 2024. So this is good. It's always sorry, I'm still thinking about my dad. It's always
Mm,
hard to it's always easy to say doom and gloom. It really has been a decrease um, in the last few years. This is good. Specific policies have been put into place, so it's down now to about 1,000 deaths per year. That's the lowest since 2017. But let's be honest, it's still crazy high compared to the rest of Europe. So it's still not great. And that sort of brings us up to something that everybody who comes to Glasgow really begins to think deeply about, and that's the deprivation gap.
mm.
If you live in the poorest areas of Scotland, you are 12 times more likely to die of a drug-related death than if you live in the richest. 12 times.
And that's the Glasgow effect right there, right?
Yeah.
And actually, and somewhat surprisingly, I guess the one of the things that there is in common between Glasgow and Edinburgh is that struggle with high levels of drugs misuse, and both are, as you say, are making progress. It was slow progress, modest progress, but it's a very difficult problem indeed.
Yeah, no, absolutely it is. But it's not just, excuse me, it's not just drugs.
Mm.
Even for cancer and heart disease, the mortality rates in these deprived areas of Glasgow are basically double than they are in the affluent ones. And I live in an affluent area of Glasgow, and I'm well aware of the differences between them, and I hate it. As a scientist, I hate this. We build these incredible treatments. I've spent my life trying to come up with better treatments, immunotherapies, gene editing. But if they don't get to everyone equally, this is not good. And, I understand this is the way of the world. I get it, but still not a fan.
So biologically speaking, then, if I can sum up, Scots are dying because of a mix of legacy lifestyle issues. So that's the smoking, the diets.
Mm,
That sounds strange to say it, but the success of living longer. So
hmm.
these are the dementias, and then that stubborn pocket of despair, the drugs misuse.
Yeah, that's a fair summary. And incidentally, we would be remiss if we didn't say that these deaths are a failure of prevention first before they're a failure of medicine. So let's not forget prevention.
Indeed. So that's a great point to start to pivot and think about the sort of
Yeah.
the economics of illness. So let me put my commercial hat on, and you've described expertly the human cost. I want to talk about the economic cost, because that's what affects our wealth as a nation. It's what drives our government policy, and it strongly influences the types of investment that you and I talk so often about, Ross.
Yeah. And this is why I'm especially excited to do these things with you. Why don't you go ahead, put a price tag on it?
Sounds dreadful, doesn't it? Well, I guess a good place to start is the Fiscal Commission report from 2025. It was a huge wake-up call. We're facing a massive health service budget gap over the next 50 years because, unfortunately, as a country, our tax base, that's the people in work paying taxes, is
Mm.
shrinking, and our cost base, that's the elderly, the retired, the sick, is growing. So in Scotland, that economic inactivity that we see through long-term sickness, that's in fact higher than anywhere else in the UK. So it's a difficult landscape.
Yeah, yeah, that's crazy, actually. So, in other words, people aren't working because they're too sick?
Exactly. And that kills our productivity. It erodes our wealth. If you have 700,000 people living with cardiovascular disease, that's a huge chunk of our workforce operating suboptimally and reduced capacity. From a business perspective, this is our industry lens. That current model is unsustainable. So NHS spend is the second biggest chunk of our budget. And there's a huge amount that we spend on medicines. And in fact, we're spending billions on treating late stage disease.
All right. So, and this, I think, is where our conversation really got going when you and I started talking about doing this podcast, right? So here we
Yeah,
are.
exactly.
So, business guy, not business guy, research guy, business guy. So, where's the opportunity? I know you're in the clinical innovation zone in Govan. What's the industry answer? Tell me.
So a significant part of the answer, I believe, is prevention, and it's
Mm,
something that we've got a way to go on. So one of the things you know about me, Ross, is that I spent a bit of time working within the NHS, and 20 years ago when I joined the NHS, we talked a lot about shifting the health service from a reactive and episodic model of healthcare to a proactive and anticipatory model of healthcare. And we were really excited about being able to develop tech within the NHS to be able to address some of those problems. So it's one of the reasons that I was so excited to be part of what was going on. It felt like a seismic change. Well, change is difficult. I guess the first thing about change is it's often slow, it's costly, and we're clearly struggling to shift the dial on this. We're struggling to grasp it. So at least part of the answer requires us to begin to pivot our investment from operating costs, that's the beds, the pills, unfortunately, the bureaucracy that we see in our hospital systems, to CapEx or capital expenditure, which is the investment that we make in early detection technology. So when we find disease early, and never mind the human cost in terms of improved survival rates, it's estimated to be about 4 times cheaper to treat early stage disease as it is to treat late stage disease.
yeah, that
So
makes sense.
so if we take the work that we do at Canon Medical with AI imaging for radiology, for example, if we can use an AI algorithm to scan a chest CT and identify a lung tumor 2 years before that patient might typically present later in stage to their GP. So just think about that as a sort of lung screening paradigm. That patient doesn't need £100,000 of immunotherapy or chemotherapy. They need a £5,000 surgery. So Ross, did you
Yeah.
know that the NHS budget in Scotland currently represents 37% of Scotland's entire devolved budget, and that this is expected to rise to 40% by the end of the decade?
That is nuts. And actually, Sandy, I had forgotten that you also had worked at the NHS. You really are in a unique position for all of this in terms of being an industry guy, an NHS guy. So, in other words, basically, that's the early diagnosis. That's the holy grail, right? Is to try to bring those money numbers down. I assume we're going to have to bring those numbers down.
Yeah, I think it is, Ross, and in Scotland we've got some real advantages. We recognise that we're one of these great places, a perfect place perhaps to do some of this research and make this change. We have great assets like the Community Health Index or the CHI number. That's our unique patient ID, and we have essentially a kind of closed loop health system. We have the experts. We have companies like Chemify and super excited to learn more about that as part of our podcast, and we're looking forward to
Yeah.
having a really exciting I showed, I guess, dedicated to learning more about that. And
Hmm.
then also like companies like my own kind of medical developing technology to do faster diagnosis. We think these are the ways to try and break that inflation curve in healthcare. If we don't fix this commercially, well, the evidence is that the NHS will simply eat the entire Scottish budget, unfortunately, by 2070.
Eat the entire Scottish budget. Yeah. So,
I'm afraid
so
so.
yeah. Uh, that would be. I'm going back to the sausage roll. So, so actually, so this actually takes us to kind of the point of this of today's topic, which is this is a message to the bio entrepreneurs, right? So the market is not just aiming at curing cancer. Here's a guy who spent my entire life trying to cure cancer. We'll get there, but it might take us a few more weeks. What we're really talking about here is keeping people out of the hospital. You know, you and I are part of this living laboratory where we have seen people with amazing ideas that the NHS is not going to embrace because it's actually going to drive costs up, even though it will help people. And unfortunately, there always has to be that balance. So, from what I've seen, your point, which is driving costs down, in other words, getting that balance right between making people better at a reasonable cost. And of course, coming out of the States, I know what it looks like when that balance goes wildly out of whack. Um, from what I've seen, I think the NHS will be more excited about your solution, which is a good bang for the buck, basically.
I think you're spot on, Ross. I think if we can pitch products to the NHS today that reduce the number of effective bed days, that get people back to work faster, and that ought to be a winning value proposition in 2026. I think the government is genuinely desperate for preventive tech. And although I'm not sure they've exactly got the money to pay for it without difficult choices, however, that's another political story, and I think that's a slightly different podcast than the one that we're trying to.
All right,
So
put it on the list.
we're feeling where the boundaries are, I guess.
Yeah.
However, I think if you can come up with tech that frees up that operating expenditure that we discussed about earlier, and really provides the productivity and the efficiency improvements that are so badly needed within the NHS, I think that technology today that can free up that expenditure, which creates the headroom, which is so crucial to affect the pivot, i.e., that change to a preventive and proactive healthcare system that we so desperately need.
Yeah, I think that's actually really well said. So let's sort of put a bow in this and do a little bit of a little bit of backtracking because we did wander around a little bit, um, and that is to wrap up the heavy stuff. At least we die primarily of cancer, okay, followed by heart disease and dementia. These are the major reasons. So to the title, how we die of cancer, we die of heart disease, we die of dementia. If you're poor, you die sooner. Um, and this level of sickness is a big drag on the Scottish economy.
Yeah, but the flip side is that, you know, Scotland has this target, and it has built already a 20 billion pound industry in this space, and we understand how to develop and solve some of these problems. And you know, genuinely, Ross, at this moment, we're exporting these solutions to other parts of the globe that are treating the very diseases that, you know, are killing us here in Scotland.
Yeah, actually, I want to say just a few moments about that, and then we'll get to our wee bit of joy, which I'm kind of looking forward to. And that is, you know, I've come here from the States. We've talked about this before. My impressive Glasgow accent is actually fake. Um, but I've been absolutely um, impressed. It's as advertised. The way people here work together, the way people here genuinely want to get things to work, and basically what you and I are trying to do is to help build that path and make it easier for people. But there's no shortage of smart people that are working on this. You and I have worked together on and seen some amazing people as well as, you know, walking our own paths. So I'm actually pretty enthusiastic about this. And this is another reason I'm super excited to do this podcast is to get to meet more of these people. So just that. These
Yeah.
we'll talk about in the future episodes. It's gonna be pretty amazing.
Yeah, I agree. I'm so excited about learning a whole lot more from the people that we're going to speak to. Really, kind of elaborating that picture that we're creating here,
Y-
Ross. And
Yeah,
actually,
totally.
genuinely, it's something that we hadn't planned to discuss, but I think is also quite important, particularly with your background, is looking at, so you've highlighted that cancer is one of the, it's taken over as the key issue that we have, in terms of a health challenge in Scotland. And I'm really excited to delve into a bit more detail around, cell health and what causes cancer and how we go about treating it. But we got planned for a huge number of episodes, so we're definitely going to get to cover these things.
Yeah, totally. That's a great point and a great idea, and we'll put it on the docket. I
We'll put it on
absolutely
the
promise that I will do a, cancer 101, a dementia 101. That'll be my little
That'll
task.
be awesome.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So that was a lot. We got a lot of death in today. Let's chill a little bit. So we end every episode with a wee bit of joy. Sandy, tell me, what brought you joy this really chilly week?
Yeah. Thanks, Ross. Yeah, so it's been chilly as we talked about at the start of
Mhm.
the podcast today, and so I'm afraid no golf to report from me. The course was covered in snow for most of the week, but instead, my wife and I we enjoyed some wintry walks next to the River Spey. It was fantastic to engage with the wildlife and beautiful scenes, enjoy that cold, fresh air. And I genuinely feel reinvigorated, restarted. So I'm ready for the week. But the thing that really grabbed my attention in sort of personal sense this week was watching the Winter Olympics. And don't judge me, everyone, but I got so into the curling. It was addictive viewing. The final against Canada. I'm glad you're
Uh,
not Canadian, Ross, so that would have been awkward tonight.
we would have had to skip this podcast.
We'd
I
have to skip
saw it as
this
well, and I
part.
saw that last two stones.
It was
That was
heartbreaking. It
brutal.
was
Yeah.
heartbreaking, but it was so awesome. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. And if you didn't get to see it, you should go and try and catch up on some of the excitement that you missed.
So I did catch that, and when they threw the stone and it just wiped all the UK's. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
got that. That was I couldn't like do the math in my head. How are they gonna beat that on the last stone?
yeah,
So yeah, I did see that, and I thought about, because it is Winter Olympics, I thought about talking about hockey, both the
yeah,
women's final and the men's final. Remember, still American in some ways.
yeah.
Some ways.
Yes, but won both, right? That was
That's right, and
incredibly
both of
exciting
them
games.
were overtime, and both of them were epic,
Yeah,
absolutely epic, right? But um, I don't know about your family, but my family keeps bugging me. Okay, the long game. You guys are
yeah.
doing this because you hatch this on the golf course, right? Um, and so where's the golf part? So, um, as you know, I've decided this week to talk about something extra special and very important to myself, and I can actually now report some detail on this. And that
Okay.
is, I bought some stupid cheap wedges on Temu. So, which is, for those of you who don't know, is a Chinese export company. I bought PGM 50 degrees and 56-degree wedges for basically 30
Nice.
quid each. Okay, they're not a copy of anything that I can figure out. So there's no real ethics issues. They're just, golf clubs. So I did try them out today. And my
Uh,
buddy, Terrence, also tried them out. And you're going to have to try them out
hey.
because they're awesome. They're really great. Now, they can't account for user error. Okay, I may have mishit them a few times, but overall, I mean, up, down, stop, maybe roll back a bit. It was so great. So I have to say, 30 quid, cannot recommend it enough for anybody who wants to get into golf and not spend an arm and a leg. I'm just saying.
Ross, are we going to have to change the title to the short game? Is this what you're trying to tell me?
Oh no, that's so good, but so bad. Because I'm actually thinking, yeah, that could be. No, no, fair. You can also buy drivers there, but I got mine, so I'm good. So we'll stick with the long game.
Yeah, you're pretty
Well,
good with your driver. Don't get any better, thanks.
thanks. You're pretty good there yourself. But we'll get into more of that later. So look, folks, that's it for this week. This has been a ton of fun, as always. Next week, I'm hoping we'll actually start to get some interviews in. You mentioned some companies. I hope to get them in. You know what, Sandy? This is going to be a ton of fun. I am
It
looking
is.
forward.
Yeah, and looking forward to that next episode. So please don't miss it. I know you won't, and we'll both see you then.
Groovy. See y'all.
Yeah, see the vision clear. We're here to run the long game. Blueprint set, no fear. Playing out the long game, the long game.